This was the yacht that Reg built. In later life, he'd actually already built a speedboat, probably the first one we had in Topsham, and he wasn't so keen on that after he realised it was using an awful lot of fuel. Very, very thirsty. So he really liked the idea of a sailing boat where he'd go offshore, do a bit of sailing, and of course the wind is free. And it took him a year to build this yacht. It's a yachting monthly eventide, and it took him a year to build. And of course, from a lot of the people that he was doing sign writing work for, he was able to get timber supplies, plywoods, fittings. And one of the things that he needed was a ballast keel, and it had to be cast by an engineering company in Exeter. And they cast the keel, and not long after that, when the yacht was launched and it was tried, he saw this advert in the paper. And you can see it's the company was Robinson Willie of Water Lane, and he did work for them. And they saw that picture and they, well, that's rather a nice picture, we'll use that, and they used that in the advert. And Reg got a little bit annoyed about that, so he rang them up and said, well, that's my yacht, and if you're using a picture of my yacht, I want to have a mention as well. Not that he ever needed to advertise. He never advertised his signwriting business in his life. He just went by people's referrals, but I think he did it with his tongue in his cheek probably. So this was the modified advert to make note of the fact that the yacht had been made for Mr. Moist yacht in Topsham. You know, that sort of seemed to satisfy him. Before Reg built that yachting monthly eventide, he built a speedboat, as I mentioned before, and he built that from a book of plans that Mum had sent away from, and the idea was that you sent away for this book, and from it you selected a boat that you liked, and then you ordered the plans. And Reg wouldn't have any of that, so that was the boat that he liked. It was called the Ranger, and that was actually what he named it, but you can see all the ink splodges and smudges all over it, and he painstakingly got his trusty magnifying glass and he really nutted out every dimension of every frame, and he built that boat in 6 weeks and enjoyed it probably for about 3 years. It originally ran with a British Seagull engine. It was only about 4.5 horsepower, and it wasn't until we were able to get the engine that the boat was really designed for, which was an Evinrude big twin 25, and that had been imported by somebody at Salcombe. He brought in 3, and Dad was very keen to get that engine, which he did. It actually cost him twice as much as it cost him to build the boat. The boat, he could have used, I think, glue, marine glue, and he could have used marine copper cleavings, but he was very aware of the fact that anything that had the name marine on it, the price went up, so he used copper carpet nails. He did use marine plywood, and the glue that he used was Bondcrete, which is still available today. And he knocked it up in 6 weeks. Had a lot of fun out of the boat, went offshore in it, went down the coast, went fishing, and because Topsham, where the boat was kept, is about 6 miles up from the sea in Exmouth, he justified the distance with the outboard because he could get down to the sea very quickly. Thanks. half an inch. That's it. That hasn't worked for about 20 years. This was a little saw bench that Reg picked up relatively cheaply, and in typical of his style, he made up a small bench to mount it on with an electric motor and double belting. That's the first time that's run in about 20 years, incidentally. And over here was the sawdust drawer to catch the sawdust in. And that was a saw that he would have used almost on a daily basis in making signs. This is a very useful little attachment there where you could run wood through to cut the 45-degree angle. And this one is a guide for sending timber through if you're just cutting a strip off it. So that was in daily use where we lived, and it was certainly something that was used in the building of both the boats. Little circular saw. I've got one or two other tools that belong to him also. Oil stone for sharpening a plane blade or a chisel, and I was taught how to do that, how to use the coarse side and then the fine side, and then just to try the blade on your thumbnail, and if it dug in, it was sharp enough. Using all the stones so it didn't wear out, hollow out too much in the middle. That was an original one of his tools, a set square, quite plain. Did the job, probably in daily use. And this was one that he called the Persuader. And the Persuader was the screwdriver that came out if there was the screw couldn't really be shifted by any other screw. And you can see it's got a flat side on it there, so you could actually put an adjustable spanner in there to get extra purchase just to turn it around. But when the yacht was made, he decided that this was the best screwdriver. It's a brace, and it had a screwdriver bit that went in there. One was really very accurately made for the screws that were in use. And what he felt was that it was better if you were screwing a sheet of plywood down with glue that had limited life before it set, that you could just go one way. So you were screwing all the way down in a clockwise direction rather than going backwards and forwards as you would do with a ratchet screwdriver. This is another one of the tools from his toolkit, something that I use myself. A jack plane. It's a beautiful plane, it cuts fantastically. In actual fact, I prefer it to the steel plane. Beautifully balanced, good steel on the blade, an absolute delight to use. Yep. Okay. That's something else from his toolkit. This is a leather bound tape measure. It's in good old feet and inches, and on the other side it's in links. It's calibrated in links for land, I guess. and I use that too from time to time. It's very good for measuring the circumference of tyres because it's flexible. Okay.